There is a quiet but persistent divide in how we describe human excellence. We speak of thinkers and doers, planners and performers, analysts and executors, as if these were opposing identities rather than complementary capacities. In universities, thinking is elevated and execution is often deferred. In sport, execution is celebrated and thinking is assumed to have already happened. This separation is artificial, and in a reality we are moving into, it is increasingly unhelpful. Today on A4 Digest, I want to explore why the people who will thrive in the next decade are those who can think like scientists and execute like athletes, and why treating these as separate skills has quietly limited human potential for far too long. Science begins with restraint. The scientist is trained to pause, to doubt, to ask whether a claim is warranted, whether a pattern is real, whether a conclusion survives scrutiny. Hypotheses are held lightly, variables are isolated, bias is treated as a constant threat. This discipline protects us from error, but it also introduces friction. Scientific thinking is deliberately slow. It resists premature certainty. It values caution over speed. And while this caution is essential for truth, it can become a liability when the environment changes faster than our confidence. Athletic execution begins somewhere else entirely. The athlete is trained to commit, not because certainty exists, but because hesitation is costly. Decisions are made with incomplete information. Adjustments happen in motion, not in advance. Feedback is immediate and unforgiving. This discipline protects action, but it carries its own risks. Execution without reflection can draft into repetition. Habits can become rigid. Momentum can mask underlying error. Both domains contain wisdom. Both contain blind spots. The problem is not thinking or doing. The problem is separating them. Elite performers in any domain rarely choose between reflection and action. They alternate between them deliberately. They think deeply, then move decisively. They act boldly, then analyze honestly. They revise assumptions, then recommit. This rhythm is not accidental, it is trained. The scientist-athlete hybrid understands that clarity does not precede action. It often emerges from it. Hypotheses are tested not only in controlled environments, but in lived conditions. Execution becomes a form of inquiry. Action generates data. This is how elite athletes learn. They do not wait until they feel ready. They step into uncertainty, observe the result, and adjust. Failure is not evidence of incompetence. It is information. Academia often reverses the sequence. Ideas are refined privately. Arguments are polished. Risks are minimized. Only when confidence is high does action occur, whether it is publication, presentation, or even a proposal. By then, the opportunity may have passed. In fast-moving environments, waiting for certainty can be a decision, and often the wrong one. Artificial intelligence intensifies this tension. AI accelerates analysis. It generates options quickly. It simulates scenarios and compresses learning cycles. In theory, this should empower better decisions, but in practice, it can encourage paralysis. When options multiply endlessly, commitment becomes harder. When analysis is cheap, execution is delayed. The scientist-athlete understands that more information does not always lead to better action. Sometimes it leads to avoidance. Athletes train for imperfect conditions. They expect noise, disruption, fatigue, and ambiguity. They learn to execute anyway. This does not mean they abandon thinking. It means they relocate it. Reflection happens before and after action, not during. In moments of performance, the mind trusts preparation. This trust is not blind. It is earned through rehearsal, feedback, and honest appraisal. The scientist-athlete therefore treats execution as an experiment. Action is not a final verdict, it is a test. Results are observed without ego. Outcomes are analyzed without defensiveness. Adjustments are made quickly. This mindset removes much of the fear surrounding action. You're not proving yourself, you are learning. This approach also protects against burnout. When execution is framed as irreversible judgment, the stakes feel crushing. When it is framed as iteration, pressure becomes manageable. Most athletes recover because they expect cycles. Most academics burn out because they experience performance as continuous evaluation. The hybrid reframes work as progression rather than performance. There is also an ethical dimension here. Thinking without action can become indulgent. It risks detachment from consequence. Action without thinking can become reckless. It risks harm. The scientist-athlete balances both. They respect evidence and consequence. They value integrity as much as momentum. They understand that speed without direction is not progress. In an AI-mediated world, this balance becomes essential. Machines will think faster than we ever can. They will simulate, predict, and recommend at scale. What they will not do is commit. Commitment remains human, and commitment requires judgment, not certainty. The future will reward those who can move without perfect information, learn from immediate feedback, reflect without collapsing into doubt, adjust without defensiveness, and repeat without losing curiosity. This is not a personality trait. It is a trained disposition. Elite athletes do not confuse preparation with hesitation. They know when thinking must stop and doing must begin. Scientists, at their best, know when action reveals what theory cannot. The most effective thinkers in the next decade will integrate both instincts. They will think rigorously and move decisively. How you train this matters. You do not wait for confidence before acting. Confidence emerges through action that survives reflection. You do not abandon analysis. You schedule it deliberately. You do not romanticize execution. You interrogate it honestly. Over time, this rhythm becomes natural. The scientist-athlete does not seek perfection. They seek learning velocity. They understand that progress is not linear. It is iterative, uneven, and occasionally uncomfortable. But it is real. If there is one lesson elite sport offers intellectual life, it is this: insight without action stagnates, and action without insight collapses. The future belongs to those who can hold both, not sequentially, but fluently. Thinking like a scientist and executing like an athlete is not a productivity hack. It is a way of engaging with complexity without being paralyzed by it. And in a world that will only become faster, noisier, and more uncertain, that capacity may be the most valuable skill of all. Until next time.